Scott McNair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Overrule Podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vicnair Law Firm. I'm your host, David Vicnair, and I'm excited to bring you a great episode today and an amazing guest, one of my favorite chefs in the city, Eric Cook, the executive chef and owner of Gris-Gris. Eric, first I wanted to jump straight in. Thank you so much for being here, but I wanted to jump into you talking about your time as a Marine in the military.
Yeah, I was a Marine in a prior life. I say all the time,
service,
absolutely. The greatest days of my life. I tell people Marine Corps is like a calling, man. It's like you don't just decide. You can't want to go in there. You got to get yanked in there, But I think I knew I was going to be a Marine when I was like 11. I was a John Wayne kid, born and raised, in the New Orleans area. Grew up in Araby. So I'm a parish kid, and in New Orleans, you grow up in we had it all. I mean, in our generation, we're Gen X kids, man. It's like, you're kids in the 70s, you're teenagers in the 80s, and it was just, the drinking age was 5'6", maybe, whatever, So we had a lot of fun, but I knew pretty early on, my dad, was a military guy, and my, my brother was in the military, So it's kind of in your blood, but I was like the John Wayne kid, I was always like the kid who knew like all the words to like the bridge over River Kwai. And all the old movies my dad would let me watch. But I joined the Marines at 17. So in high school, realizing my scholastic limitations, I kind of knew where I was, when everybody, you grow up playing sports, and our 11 Quad A, big Catholic league, we were still in the big Catholic leagues, when we played at Chalmette High, and all our friends were jocks, and then somewhere along the way, I just kind of went, whoop, rock and roll, and just kind of split the other way. But the Marines was an easy transition. I literally graduated high school, got my diploma, took some pictures with my folks, threw it at them, and went straight to Fat Harry's. That's what you do, when you're like 17. And got schnocked, just got, anesthetized. My recruiter picked me up from the bar at like 3 o'clock in the morning and said, like, you ready to go? I'm like, ready to go. And it's just, this is the 80s, like, I'm like Z Cavaricis, leopard skin creepers, like looking like an 80s kid, and boom, off to boot camp, and now crazy, So,
wow.
And that was my plan, that there was no plan B.
What were you thinking at such a young age going into the military? I think sometimes about my grandfather on my mom's side, he was 19 on the plane going to Europe in World War II. Kid from Shreveport who had no military training gets thrown on the plane to go into World War, right?
Yeah.
And so I always think about that, and you being 2 years younger, like maybe we were we in active combat at the time that you entered? Or
I mean, we've been in active combat for, I don't know,
it
my
seems
whole
like
life.
Forever.
There's always
right?
something going on.
I know. Like right now we're talking about this is the Iran.
Is the Iran
conflict going on?
But
right
again,
now,
and everywhere you see, and it's it's weird. I look on TV, and you see the Strait of Hormuz and all those, UAE. But I was all over there. I was there. I mean, it's been what 35 years, I guess, since we were over there, for the Gulf, and then less than that, we moved from the Gulf, and then we ended up going back, and went to Iraq, and a bunch of deployments. So the Middle East has always been a hotbed, but the mindset for me was just, I can't speak for how kids think today, but. It was cool. I remember I was like, "What? You joined the Marines?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude." I mean, like, and it was just, you don't think about it really. I guess, I don't mean. My parents are like, "Good luck," because my brother had already joined, and gone away.
Right.
Both my sisters were in college, up at USM, and it was just like, "What are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I'm gonna get out of here," because what was my way out, because everyone's kind of moving, every kids grow up and move on. I was the youngest of four, so I watched my older brother, join the Navy and run off, and I was still a kid, and then his sisters grow up, and all of a sudden you're the last kid in the house, and everything's empty and quiet,
right?
So it's weird. You're trying, you get forced into this. What am I gonna do with my life situation? And I definitely knew it wasn't going to be anything related to, college or anything, So. It was the military, and I had a buddy of mine who joined, who was a year older than me, and he was like, "Dude, you got to get it. It's the greatest thing in the world." I'm like, "Yeah," I was in. I couldn't wait. Literally, I could not wait to get in there. And it's, I don't know, it's weird. Once you get in, you meet. It's a very minded group of individuals. Just mildly. Marines are crazy. But you don't realize that you have people who are similar to you till you get in there, and like, and you meet so many people. There were athletes, there were football players, there were there were class clowns, wittiest jokesters, and it was all the same thing. We're all the same, we all had the same background. I took the prom queen, I mean, like we were all those guys, I mean, and you just get kind of put together, and then they. For us, we started with like 88 guys, and I think we graduated 46 maybe out of that.
Okay.
So it's almost a 50% drop off in boot camp, and but by the time you get to the end, you make some real lifelong friendships. I still have friends, that I still talk to pretty regularly, from, 88.
You were stationed all over the Middle East, right? What areas were you stationed in that you can or can't talk about?
Yeah, due to my great grades in high school, I was, I got the offer to be in the infantry, which is, that's why they send the smart guys. So they just hide all that.
You know what? It doesn't matter because you can sure fucking cook.
Yeah, exactly. And I tell people I was a much better Marine than I ever was a cook, and I'm a hell of a cook, But yeah, I went in the infantry, and it's what you would think, or what you wouldn't think. I don't know what to think. I didn't have any predisposition to what was going to happen in boot camp, To me, I just kind of went with it, maybe because I had an older brother who beat me up all the time, it was, you grew up in New Orleans, man, you're tough skinned, so I don't, boot camp wasn't shocking to me, it was motivating, it gave me something to push for. And then when I got out, you go to school, you go to infantry training school, and then you go to a specialized school. I was up in Mare Island in the Bay Area for a while. They call it security forces training up there. It's like FAST Company, which is Fleet Anti-Terrorist Support Team. They might have changed the name by then. But, big, smaller branch stuff. I did some time early on with those guys. Started out in the Aleutians, actually. I was up in Alaska, in Adak, which is like, if you ever look at a map of Alaska, and then there's like the islands that come out on the bottom. And then in the corner of the map, there's this little bitty tiny square where the rest of the islands continue, out there, so you're like, closer to mainland Russia than you are to, mainland Alaska, so.
Wow.
That's why I got picked up a clearance. I got a top secret clearance up there, working with some units, and it's all messing with Russia really up there, it's just, flying around the submarines, playing AC/DC in helicopters, mooning them out of helicopters. They thought we were crazy, man. We did a lot of crazy stuff. But then you hit the fleet, and that's where it's at. The fleet Marine Force is like, it's like, I'll never forget checking into my unit. It was like, I grew up watching MASH, big MASH fan, I mean, so when I got to my unit, it was the first thing it kind of made me feel like, these guys are outside we lived in these old Quonset huts, and like, guys like in a robe with flip-flops, like smoking a cigarette. The other guys got just shorts. They're playing basketball. I'm like, this is great.
It's funny because this morning I literally just saw, if you remember, I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, there's a Seinfeld episode where Frank Costanza spoofs a MASH episode where he has PTSD because he got all the soldiers sick. That was on this morning.
But that was it, So, once you hit the fleet, you become deployable, with big units. So, you jump around. I was based on the West Coast, so we do Pacific floats. We do Westpacks. We call them. Western Pacific is our area, and mostly it's from. You usually leave the states and Hawaii, Philippines. Thailand, all the way to Australia. You're up and down. You kind of cruise around the whole Western, making sure everything's all good to go. It's mostly Southeast Asia, stuff like that. But when something happens, the Marine Corps rotates their deployments, so there's always somebody out there, there's always a unit right behind them, and there's one guy, one whole unit in training. So it's like this training cycle never ends of just pumping Marines and you could be anywhere in the world in 12 hours. Anywhere. If you're on a big group and you're, usually when you're deployed, you would, a aircraft carrier group or something, hey, you got to go somewhere, like you can get on a plane.
Yeah, and just following the Iran conflict right now that I've been following just online, with a lot of military accounts, because it's not like news and all that crap that you get associated with news. It's like true military accounts. If you follow it, you will see like the rapid redeployment of forces from different regions of the world into the Middle East, into different bases. They move them through England. It's kind of crazy.
And it's tough for me to watch all that stuff with conflicts going on. Even through the last when we were in Iraq was brutal, man. Afghanistan was brutal, man. There's a lot of brutal stuff going on that people don't need to know about, which is it's just the world, It's like for millennia. Since like dinosaurs were on Earth, they were fighting other dinosaurs, man. It's just
True.
It's life, But back then there was no media, and there was no social media. We didn't have phones. We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
We didn't. We had Game Boys. That was it. You want to write home, you write home a letter like, here you go, and it goes into a bin, for 8 months later, maybe your folks get a letter or something,
Right.
But it's all real time, which changes the game. It also, with technology, it changes the game for military people, for a trillion satellites in the sky watching you move in real time every day, So I don't know, man. It's just tough to watch it. Everyone on the outside tends to make their opinions, and how they feel about the war and all. Great, you have those, but people forget there's a human element to it.
On both sides.
There's a bunch of 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids out there, 20-year-old kids, 21-year-old kids maybe. That's not a, the military is not for the older. It's a young bunch of people, trying to find direction. And this is what they do. This is why they're there. This is their honor. This is their family. They're in line for generations for family honor with Marines and military. And when they get called up, it's an honor. And then when we were over there deployed, we still had support back then. I remember, the yellow ribbons around the trees. And, we got trillions of letters from kids, how proud they were. It was Save Our Troops. It was all the things. Everywhere it was a big support. That support is diminished, unfortunately, because of, just politics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if once politics entered everything, that was kind of it, So I always think about the guys who are over there, because I was over there. I can show you pictures, man. But you're hanging around the desert. You're not thinking about what's going on back home. You don't care.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear about it. You don't. You got a mission. You got a buddy. You got something to do. This is what either you live or die.
Yeah.
You don't have time to sit around and debate like, are we ethically correct here? Now we are. What I mean? Like
survival
it's war,
instincts,
man.
right?
It's not meant to be polite. It's not meant to be pretty. It's not meant to be broadcast. It's violent. And it's the most violent thing humans have ever invented in their existence on Earth,
Yeah.
So, whatever. I still think, look, I love watching stuff like that, man. It gets me going. I remember I still have 9/11 tattooed on my hand. And I was long out after that, and I'm like, I'm going back in. And you run down the stairs, and you're like, maybe not. Man. I'll watch it on TV. But
Well, that journey of that stage of your life. So you saw the world in many ways that most people don't have the opportunity to see, right?
Exactly.
And then how did that lead you, Eric, into your culinary journey?
Yeah, it was really weird. There was no plan B.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I'm gonna go in the reserves and come back and pay for my college and go study. Once I got out of high school, with like the 1.00, by design, I was like, D stands for diploma.
Make that valedictorian and get his ass over here and try to cook a gumbo.
Because ready, man. Yeah, look, I didn't care, man. It was the '80s. You didn't like, pass Art 4 and you're a high school graduate.
Yeah.
But there was no plan B. So again, we're in the Middle East for a while. And politics get involved and change of occupancy in the White House, and instantly a military direction changes. So at that point there was just like, bring them all home, no more war, la 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 la. I think Clinton had just come in. So it was a big downsizing.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of got pulled out and like, okay, good luck. And they drop you off. I took a ship home, it took us months and months and months and months to get home, but we ended up like pulling off the coast of California, dropping a Zodiac out the back of a Navy ship. And I threw my bag in a Zodiac, like with a little, Mercury 80 on the back, like, rolled into the beach, like, all right, back in America. And that's how we came home.
Wow.
Literally,
Oh
no
my gosh.
parades, no fanfare, no nothing, like walk up to your barracks, throw it in there, and we were kind of out of there, so.
Wow.
All of a sudden, you're checked back in to the world, and you're like, "What the hell's going on?" And my goal was to get the hell out of New Orleans. It wasn't to come right back. And so all of a sudden, I find myself, you drift a little bit. I had some buddies. We get out at the same time. We got out. And you make friends around. I had some buddies in Havasu. I had some buddies in L.A. And you all have the dreams when you're in. Like, we're going to Havasu, Copper Canyon, man. We're going, and it's like. 3 days out there with your buddies, like, we're not doing anything, we're just drinking every day, So I found myself, landing back home, and it was just one of those things, it's like, who you know.
Sure.
I drifted for a while, in and out of jobs, trying to do different things, and then I get introduced to Clark Brennan. So my older sister's, one of her best friends is Clark's wife, and then Clark and my sister's husband went to Spring Hill, the New Orleans connection, like, we'll get you a job. Like, sounds great. What am I doing? Like, come down to the restaurant, We want the family eating out growing up. We didn't, we didn't have money to go to restaurants. In the Marines, we surely weren't fine diners,
Right.
So all of a sudden I get dropped into, like, Brennan's on Royal Street, like 417, and I'm like,
this is a whole different world.
what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
you work in the kitchen. I'm like, what am I doing? I had no idea. So it is sticky in the back. My first day of work had like khakis, like topsiders, like a polo on, like I'm applying for like the cashier job at like Walgreens or something, and
Put this apron on.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, what? So a couple of days into it, some guys, loaned me a pair of pants, like gave me a jacket, to wear. I started, but I was just peeling potatoes and shrimp and, like bouncing around the line, I was all tatted
How old
up.
were you at this time?
I was in my 20s, mid-20s, So Mike Roussel was the executive chef, one of the greatest Creole New Orleans chefs in our history. He's a great guy, But the place was crazy big. Breakfast at Brennan's, you go to work at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
You're in the French Quarter, so basically you have to walk through the DMZ to get into work,
Yeah.
It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, you're walking to work, it's still going.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you're... All right.
Everybody's
what's up,
still
man?
partying.
People are still going. You're on your way to work.
Yeah.
But I you get in there and you're like, we would drink community chicory coffee, like dark. There was no cream and sugar with those guys. It was like brew coffee. It was like they're reading the paper and drinking coffee for like 20, 30 minutes in the main dining room. And then the chef de cuisine, a guy named Lazone Randolph, would like fold up his paper, dad style, under the arm, and get up and grab his coffee. And we can go in now. We couldn't go in the kitchen until those guys decided we can go in the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
And then you get in there, and it was like, it was military operation,
Yeah.
And that's, I think, how I really landed there, because there was a chain of command, there was discipline, there was camaraderie. Yes, sir, no, sir became yes, chef, no, chef. Great. And I'm a Marine, fresh out of, insanity. What am I afraid of? Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we need you to do this. Great. When? Now? Okay, you do it, And that's something that really isn't that prevalent in the industry, is like people who like, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, no, sir, let's go. I didn't care. Like, what else am I going to do, So
It's an interesting comparison point, though. Like a restaurant, many times it's not life or death, but like, so for example, like medicine, for example, surgery, those types of things.
Yeah.
That's a military. Like the doctors can't be worried about hurting the nurse's feelings and vice versa.
Yeah.
Because like somebody lives or dies.
Right.
And in a restaurant, it's not life or death, but it is life or death that the customer has a bad experience and they may never come back. And so it's like, if you don't run the kitchen like that, and the operation doesn't run like that, then the result doesn't end up on the customer's plate. So it is just, I really was struck by how in your life you've had that experience in the military, and it's kind of then introduced into your introduction into restaurants.
It took a while to mold into it, because I was still angry and wild, and I'm working in the French Quarter, man. We're like, wow, we'd go to work at 4:30 in the morning. Like I said, you get off at like 3. We'd hit the local watering hole where everybody knew us, on Bourbon Street, like Bourbon Street Blues Company or something. What I mean? Like all the girls knew us, and like, all right, and you get like 6 Budweisers. We'd hang out and talk about work and make fun of people, running around the quarter, messing with people. We knew everybody around the quarter, And then I remember the house band would come on. That was my signal. The house band would come on at the same time every night. It was like 5 o'clock or something, and it was like, all right, welcome to such and such, And it was like, Dan. And it was Pat Benatar, hit me with your best shot. And then like every day it was like, Dan, and I'm like, check please. And that was when I was out. Like no house band, and I was just gone. You know what I mean? And but the thing about it is you kind of get in those military routines, but you get in that, Today, one of my mottos in my restaurant, I tell a lot of my kids, I just kitchen guys anyway, I'm like the best thing about today is there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
There is no tomorrow. There's no tomorrow in a restaurant. And there's no yesterday, there's no nothing. It's just right now.
Yeah.
No matter what happened yesterday is irrelevant to the people who are sitting in front of you today.
That's true.
They've never been here. They don't know what's going on. They don't know you, your story, your jokes, your background. They're just hungry cats who dropped into a joint and said, let's give these people some money, what I mean? And that's kind of what it is, It's a really weird, you have to lend yourself to everyone, really. You have to open your door to everyone, but you have to perform every day, And you don't always do your best, you don't, but your mistakes, are do more to you than your victories do.
Yeah.
You win every time you make somebody happy. You make one person mad out of 10,000. It's just an axe. You know what I mean? So it's a tough business. You know what I mean? But it never ends. It never ends. And ironically, and I don't want to sound offensive, but from my background, Marine, whatever. Obviously, I've been in the Middle East and done a lot of things. But I always tell people like the restaurant business is a holy war. I'm like, it's never going to end.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah, as the owner and the employees in restaurants, it's never going to – you're not going to wake up tomorrow and read the paper and be like, we won the service industry, let's go. A big ticker tape parade down Canal Street and we all win and we get, checks. No. You got to go to work every day.
Yeah. You
do it every day. You can't lean on nothing you did yesterday. It doesn't matter.
So it's not a cliche at all. It's probably one of the hardest businesses to be in. What is your perspective? I've heard like Danny Meyer, who's a celebrated – restaurateur in the country, make the comment that where do you see that he makes the comment on hospitality, the importance of hospitality? How do you, as somebody who I know, and the food is just excellent. I agree, your food is amazing. But like, how do you balance, like in his perspective, he argues, and a lot of people in your industry argue, that the hospitality is almost more important than the food. That people will come back if the food's maybe a little bit below their expectations, but the hospitality was great. But if the food's great and the hospitality is poor, they might not ever come back. How do you balance that and juggle that? What is your perspective on
and then I just flip it like that. I read a lot of stuff about the industry. I read a lot of, podcasts, and I listen to a lot of people who are talking. Hospitality is super important. You know what I mean? But we will always talk coming up like, if I go in a restaurant and my server is like the best person in the whole world and I just get a bowl of slop, like, I'm not going back to get a high five from a server to give her 30% on a tip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I go in there and my server is just garbage and I eat the best meal of my life, I'm definitely going back.
Fair.
Because it's good food. You're there for the food. You know what I mean? The hospitality is what accompanies it. You know what I mean? So you're going out to eat. Now, when you enter New Orleans, the whole thing gets shuffled. Because in New Orleans, we are
a war zone for restaurants, right?
Well, we're the only thing we got going on. We're a very, very, very social city. You know what I mean? Like, we are very, dining savvy city. Forever, always have been. Like, we are the greatest food town in the world, period.
Yeah.
The end. Some people might do it better in here, but there's no greater place than New Orleans for restaurants.
I agree.
You know what I mean? It's insane. You know what I mean? But, it's a balance. It's changed. I remember working at Brennan's the first time that somebody handed me a card and said, hey, my guest has these allergies. And I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell that is. What is this? And
you'll be fine.
Yeah, some kid from CIA is like, oh, that's da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, well, you do it. I don't know what's going on. But so that education changed. Food Network changed. TV changed. Social media changed. Podcasts, websites, YouTube, TikTok. Yeah. It's just flooded information, And again, like the military, restaurants weren't meant to be seen back door to front door. We don't let people in through where we dump the trash and wash the dishes. You come in through the front door,
Right.
But so many times, that's the focal point with, things. It's like, it's an entertainment business is what it is. And I tell a lot of people that as well, too. So my kids are like, look, I don't care if we're selling like little plastic things on the end of your shoelace, they're called like whatever, like Flubel Nobbles or whatever. If somebody's doing it better than you, they're going to buy their Flubel Nobbles from somebody else. We're just a marketing company that sells food. You know what I mean? So, and that's what restaurants are. Period. Now in New Orleans, we have deep.
It's funny you say that, Miles. Is like I see him at the corner of my eye giggling because I always tell the people at the firm like we're a marketing company that sells legal services.
Bingo. Everything is.
It's like
everything is.
If you don't have, I saw a great annotation, a great video the other day. It's like if you don't have sales, you got nothing.
Nothing. What you do.
It doesn't matter how good for you the food is done. For me, it doesn't matter how good my lawyers are. If we don't have sales, everything else doesn't matter.
And that
so if everybody's going to eat, somebody's got to sell.
That's New Orleans. You know what I mean? In New Orleans, we were able to have sales forever because we had a booming restaurant economy. But we had a booming economy. We had a booming CBD. In my lifetime, I've watched this downtown area just go. It's nothing. It's shells of buildings.
Yeah.
And the downtown restaurants, the buzz. Like there's so many restaurants downtown. So many, and they're amazing. What I mean? But everyone's, we don't have the downtown population to eat and
Support it
dine
all.
like we used to. You know, what I mean?
Yep.
So locals can't support this city. You know,
Yeah.
so it's even more important now that we hit on all these notes. But again, it's become so publicly debated. If someone with 600,000 followers says, I'm going there, people go there.
Yeah.
And I don't even know this cat from nothing. This dude doesn't know me, doesn't know anybody, but they popped in some joint and said, we love it, click. And it's just, it's chasing clicks, chasing media. So it's changed the whole game. But like you said, hospitality is everything. But there's a lot of great debates. If you ask people ask me all the time, what's the core of your business? And, and as a young, immature fledgling in the industry, as just a hungry honcho, you're like, it's hospitality, it's service, it's great food, it's environment, it's location. It's none of it. It's money. The end. So every business plan you build, you take a dollar sign, you circle it in the middle, and then you start saying, okay, what do you want to do? I want to have the best, dish in the city. Okay, boom, we'll get the best dish in the city, best service. I want to be a good neighbor because when we moved into Magazine Street, I tell everybody our number one goal is to be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
The end. You have to win your neighborhood. There's 73 neighborhoods in New Orleans.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
At least win yours. You know what I mean? And then you got to make people leave their neighborhood to come
to you,
to their neighborhood place. You know,
yeah.
so but all the things you want to do. I've got a little league team, a little uptown, called the Gris-Gris Greasers. That we sponsor them with,
I love that.
skull and crossbone baseball shirts for a bunch of kids.
Amazing.
But I mean, you want to do that, you got to make money.
Yes.
You want to have a great culture in your restaurant, you got to make money.
Yes.
You want to, have a really cool cocktail list and put out really good food, make money.
Yeah.
It's just it's a business. It's the restaurant business. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And unfortunately, for probably 94% of the people in the restaurant business, they have zero clue about what the business really is.
And the wild thing about everything you just said is the same shit happens in law.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable.
It's in every, and it's really, and I think 2020 just really pulled the lid off everything and said, here we all are naked in the street. Look how vulnerable we all are.
And especially for the restaurant business. I mean, probably the industry hit the hardest by COVID. But talking a bit about that, I mean, one of the things that really stands out about Gris-Gris for me is just the uniqueness of, okay, for starters, as an outsider looking in, I'm not surprised that you have a different take on, like, for example, like Danny Meyer's take, because my perspective, and I don't want to be presumptuous, of your style or your ethos is the food is just really effing good.
That's
like
what it
your
should be.
food is so good. I mean, I told you before we went on the show, and I've told you this in the restaurant before, being from Thibodeau and understanding, having had, whether it's gumbo or crawfish etouffee from my grandmother. I'm thinking about my Emma's food that she was an amazing. She wasn't a chef, but she was.
Everybody is in Thibodeau.
Everybody is
Lafayette,
and Cutoff and Galliano and the southwestern part of the state. In any event, there's not many restaurants that have like amazing gumbos and an okra gumbo to boot, because I think you get the slime out before you put the okra back in.
Yep.
Your gumbo is one of my favorite gumbos in New Orleans, if not my favorite, and the one I recommend to people all the time when they ask me about gumbos. But it doesn't just stop there. I just was telling you I had your Réveillon dinner, probably misbutchered that word, and the rice dressing, like, was just the flavors in that Merloton rice dressing were amazing. And so I can go down the line of all your food dishes, but to me, like, could you talk a little bit about that? Because to me, the flavors just jump out at me all the time when I eat at Gris-Gris.
And that's it. That's the whole thing, And so when you get in the business, as me, I got in my 20s, I'm in my late 50s now, it's like, you're like everything else. You want to do the cool thing. You want to find the good stuff. And we dove into the molecular gastronomy, man. You look at restaurants like Alinea and all these places, and you're like, whoa, you know. And then it gets to be, I always say, and I don't say it all the time publicly, but I'll say it. I don't really care anymore. I mean, there's two kinds of chefs, man. There's food nerds and there's food jocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can figure out who I am. You know what I mean? But You know, all this the pharmacies in the dry storages. You know what I mean? Like the transglutamate powder, short rib. You know, blah blah, sous vide, foie gras, torchon. Right? You know what I mean? Like, and it's really easy.
I'm a Top Chef fan, so I get a good giggle out of that because it's like it's like it never ends. It's
you
like
know, I'll never forget
they're
my wife.
freezing this. They got the smoke flying out the thing. I'm like,
My wife and her girlfriends, they went out one night, you know, to a restaurant, and they called me like, "Hey, we're here at so and so, and like we're reading the menu. We don't know what anything is." I'm like, "Send me a picture," and they sent me a picture of, like the appetizer section. Da da da. I'm like, "Wow," you know what I mean? Like, all right. I'm like, "Do this." I'm like, "Get one of everything." And then y'all play the let's guess what it is game. You know what I mean? And they don't, you know. And look, my wife lives with me. You know, she's been around food. She's been through all my food nerdism. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they couldn't figure it out. You know, I'm like, and the problem is like chefs write menus to impress chefs.
Yeah.
The end. That's it. Nobody else.
Yeah.
Nobody else. They want to make their chef friends go like, that dude's cool. And some food writer go, that dude's friends thinks he's cool.
Yeah.
And no one thinks about the cat from Coulon Road who's driving in from Thibodeau to go spend a weekend, catch a Saints game or something. They want to pop in a restaurant. This is new. Let's check out the new place. And all of a sudden, they're just embarrassed because they don't know jack on the menu.
Yeah.
And then you have to go, oh, you must be too dumb to know it. And you get the snoot and this, you know, the curly, you know, it's all this culture of, you know, hierarchy, like we know more than you. Let us educate you. I don't want you to teach me anything, man. I want you to feed me. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
shut up.
Yeah.
You know, so you go through those phases, man, you know what I mean? And then I always, you know, it really, the light bulb went off for me when I was working at the World War II Museum.
Yep.
You know, which is, you know, one of the best parts of my whole career, you know, because it was just, it's the World War II Museum.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, you're in that building, like, we watched the planes go up, you know, like, it was like, what is going on? You know, like, such an amazing place. But then besides just being an amazing place, it's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And there are amazing veterans in there who are still telling stories.
Yeah.
Who are still like 20-year-old kids, you know, who are in there. Like, I was a Marine, lots of, you know, World War II vets in there, Navy guys, you know, and I'd come walking through one of the hallways, you hear, you know, hey, jarhead, you know, I'm like, oh, hey, dog bowl, you know, and you still got that razz, you know, you still got that, you know, you're a military guy for life, you know, but it's humbling to where in that, you know, museum, we have a restaurant, the American sector, you know, and it was a great restaurant. But we didn't have, you know, we didn't have to be the greatest thing there because we weren't. We were never going to be. We just had to be good enough to stand up in that location is how I approached it. Like, I don't want to be the star of the World War II Museum. It's stupid. You know, I want people coming to visit the World War II Museum and see that they have an amazing lunch, go, that was really cool, Rich, you know. And so from there, I kind of let go of the molecular gastronomy at a point, you know, and just said, let's just get down to American food, you know, like, let's make meatloaf, pot roast, chicken and dumplings, you know, like.
And do it well.
Yeah. Let's do things that people know. Let's get, you know, just get simplified things. Let's get back to home cooking, you know.
Yeah.
And that light bulb just went off. Now you have some fun along the way, you know. You know, the oyster BLT, we do a play on words, you know. It's like, you know, pork belly and arugula and tomato. But that's food. It's fun. It should be hip. But, I mean, it's nothing you don't understand what it is, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And that's when the light bulb went off me is that let's start making food that strikes conversation and strikes memory, you know.
It's interesting because, you know, the way I felt about what you just said about those types of restaurants, right? I felt that way at different like Michelin restaurants, either in Europe or at other different Michelin restaurants. And I still think one of my favorite dining experience was at Emeril's, which was like a fine dining experience, right? Yeah. Elevated, got all these Michelin stars. Yeah. But like, it was all basic food. Yeah. Like I knew everything that was being served. It was gumbo. It was, you know, it was all these things. It wasn't me trying to figure out what this bubble looking thing was. It was good food. They had fun with it. They elevated it, but you know what I mean?
That's when you get, you know, I mean, look, you know, the lightning bolt, Emeril, you know, came up, you know, when one of the greatest chefs in the world, we're lucky to have him here in New Orleans, you know. EJ is like, you know, lightning striking twice in the same spot, you know what I mean?
For sure.
But that restaurant in general, you know, people give all those guys a bunch of grief, man, you know, I mean, about, you know, what it was. Look, you know, Emeril's brilliant. Good for him. You know, I mean, he put New Orleans on the map, really, you know, globally. You know, we had, you know, Paul Prudhomme, you know, we had Mike Roussel, we had Frank Brightson, you know, we got, you know, Leah Chase, you know. It goes on and on and on, the greats, you know what I mean, Tom Fitzmaurice, you know, who kept us alive, you know, and informed. You know. It was such a great food environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, a guy like EJ, man, like meet him. He's
Yeah.
the most humble cat in the world. You know, I mean, he's the most generous, grateful, honest, straight shooter. Like, you know, because it's easy to go like, who's this kid coming in here thinking you're like, dude's badass.
Yeah.
Period. That's who he is. And you know,
And he's doing his own thing,
and he
apart
understands
from his
it, yeah.
dad, which is neat too. But let me ask you: didn't Emerald? So you mentioned Paul Prudhomme because you were at Commanders
Yeah.
as well. Didn't Emerald go through Commanders
Oh,
too?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
absolutely, yeah.
him,
All the
Paul
guys.
Prudhomme,
Bryson, you know, Paul, Emerald, all of them. I mean, so, and that's the thing about New Orleans. Are great. That's such a good pedigree of people coming through the big restaurants. Because back then it was only the big restaurants. You know,
Yeah.
we used to laugh about it. You know, when we were kids, like it's always going to be. If you'd asked me when I was in my 20s working in the quarter, like, you know, what are the, you know, name 10 restaurants in New Orleans? I'd be like Antoine's, Brennan's, Galatoire's, Quarter Two Sisters, you know, Paul's was right across the street from us, so we knew Paul was there. I used to run over there all the time. He used to yell at me about stuff, and Mike used to make me run errands down to the A&P on Royal.
to K. Paul's,
To K. Paul's,
Yeah.
yeah. They would call the kitchen phone like,
which was an
cookie down
amazing
there?"
restaurant.
Oh, man, you
I mean,
know.
good lord.
But I mean, it was just big restaurants. I mean, for, you know, and New Orleans is a big restaurant town. You know, it's changed so much now. The bistro style, the young chefs can come out, food trucks. You know, all the things have changed. You know what I mean? And the market has changed, and we have changed as a city. You know, but for me, we said back to the question. You know, it was about the food for me always, and so my mom's chicken and dumplings on the menu at Gris-Gris. That's my mom's chicken and dumplings.
Amazing.
Period. The end. Because, again, I'm the youngest of four. I still, to this day, my mom will cook chicken and dumplings on my birthday.
Wow.
She's like 84. You know what I mean? I'm like, they won't do anything about it. I'm the youngest. I get that kind of push, you know what I mean? But, I mean, that's the kind of thing. You know, people come in and go, man, I remember, you know, like that rice dressing, you know, the Merleton, you know,
It was
stuffing,
it was
you know,
amazing.
like
I'm not saying that because you're there.
the
Like,
Réveillon menus, you know, you're like, and
that
that's what it was. It was
two or 3 months ago, and I still remember that rice dressing.
Yeah.
Like that's how much I forgot a lot of the rest of the menu. It was all delicious,
That's
but
it.
that the flavors in that were so amazing. I
And
didn't
the thing
forget
about
it.
it is, with our cuisine in New Orleans, you know, Creole food, Cajun food, you know, whatever it's so hard to even put it into a thing, you know what I mean? Because New Orleans has its own world of food, you know. It's such an amazing melting pot
Sure.
of culture and history and passion, you know, and families. It's family recipes, you know. We're 300 plus years old, you know, and the influences have just been stacking and are still stacking.
Yeah.
And that's what's really great about New Orleans, that it's still evolving.
I
You know
wanted
what
to
I mean?
ask you that, Eric, in relation to Gris-Gris. We were talking about this a little bit before the show. So, in the Ella Brennan documentary, she talks a lot about like when she hired Paul Prudhomme, it was kind of like a bit of a jerk to the Uptown crowd, like
Yeah.
because it was like she was bringing
This
a
Cajun boy,
Cajun
in
boy
there, yeah,
into the hub of their Creole food, and it was like the inner.
French discipline, you know. And Paul came in like a gunslinger, man. Yeah.
And so it was kind of like this fun and wild interplay of Cajun food intersecting with and clashing with Creole,
Right.
And so I never really thought about that until I watched that 2, 3, 4 years ago, and like thought about my own background and eating Cajun food, thought about restaurants I go to in New Orleans and how some things are different that if you don't think about it, you would never really like if you're not in your world, right?
Right.
And so I think about Gris-Gris, what I would like you to chat about a bit. I know this is all very complicated, but like Gris-Gris, it describes itself a bit as Creole, but I feel like a lot of the food there is Cajun. And one of the best Cajun restaurants that I like reminisce about certain foods that I have there is having similar flavors to growing up from my grandparents in Thibodeau.
Right.
And so what is the intersection there? Is there any, or do you just
Yeah,
think that
I
the
mean,
two have kind of come together and it's
like,
one
you know,
now?
and for me, it's like everybody else. You know, it's a slippery slope. You know, people ask me all the time, "What's the best Cajun restaurant in New Orleans?" You know, and I'm like, "Oh man, go right there to the interstate, make a left, and in about 3 hours and 10 minutes, get off on any exit, find a gas station, and you're there."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 'Cause that's where it is.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the Vermilion Parish, man. But so my influences, obviously, you know, growing up in South Louisiana and all my friends, you know, and going through the industry, I have friends in Lafayette and Thibodeau and everywhere, Breaux Bridge, you know, and so we didn't cook as much, I think, as they cooked growing up. Like in Thibodeau, you know, we cooked. I was the youngest. I peeled a lot of shrimp. You know, I did a lot of the dirty work. I did a lot of dishes. You know, I mean, I did a lot of stuff. I was in the kitchen all the time, and I didn't realize how much I really remembered until I really started thinking about it. But, you know, like you said, man, down the bayou, man, like, you know, in Lafayette and Thibodeau, you visit somebody's house, you're eating.
Good food.
That's it. You know,
Yeah.
you're getting something to eat. You know what I mean? And it's all good. So hunting camps, fishing camps.
Yeah.
You know, my best friend, my roommate when I was at Commanders, Wes Landry from Delcombe, Louisiana. You know what I mean? And we were best friends. He was like, you know, a maniac. We're both maniacs, but he opened the restaurant. I closed the restaurant. We were roommates up on Magazine. You know what I mean? So we had an opportunity every blue moon to do some time together. You know, if we had a day off and I had whatever, you know, and I'd be like, we'd go fishing. We'd go out to Delcombe, see his folks. You know, and you get introduced to this. My first real introduction, you know, or big introduction, like getting in the kitchen with, you know, someone's mom and they're getting down, like, let's go, man.
Yeah.
You know, so, but then you're a student of it. You know what I mean? So I tried for a long time to replicate the gumbo that I had at his parents' house, that his mom, Dale Landry, made me. And it was terrible. I couldn't do it. It took a long time for me to go, dude, I got it. But that's what they do. They grow up doing it. I mean, so when I put my gumbo on my menu from day one, I have to open a menu on my phone today. It says Paris de Vermilion, you know, so inspired. And so Paris de Vermilion inspired gumbo, you know, bowl cup. And that's Vermilion Parish inspired.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's a different approach, you know. And now I've got friends in Lafayette and Robo who come in like, dude, you're the only gumbo we'll eat in New Orleans. The end.
A month
because
ago.
It's based on that, you know.
A month ago, Eric, I had a lawyer here who her husband Sean's parents were in from DC, and they were like, "Hey, because to Thibodeau to down the bayou people, down on Lafourche, Thibodeau people are not coon asses,
Right.
but to New Orleans people, Thibodeau people are coon asses. It's all perspective
all
of
perspective.
how far down the bayou you are. But
make
they
it a
think of
lefty or
me
make
as
it a right? Which way you gonna go?
they probably think of me as like, oh, he's the coon ass guy, so he'll know where the good gumbos are. And so it's like, try to get as big of that from Gris-Gris as you can. And they all were like, thank you, that was a good recommendation. That gumbo was amazing. So it's the one I tell people because it's the one I enjoy. One of the ones I enjoy eating the most. And
well, that's the influence. That's how we're so lucky to be in this city because, you know, Lafayette is not a million miles away. I mean,
Right.
and we're, you know, we got Saints, you know, so I mean, Lafayette,
They all come
Baton
here.
Rouge,
They
everybody's
all
coming
come
here.
here.
You know
That's
what I mean?
right.
So the thing about, you know, when you get into the Creole and the Cajun thing, you know, and you hear people talk about it, you know, and no better person than Ella, obviously, to talk about, you know, cuisine and hospitality in New Orleans, clearly, you know, the matriarch of all of us. But you said like when Paul comes in, you know, you talk about that smash of culture, you know what I mean? And but you look at a place like, you know, Commanders, you know what I mean? Like it's top notch, you know. So I mean, I wish I could be a fly on the wall back there in those days when you first started doing things. It had to be, you know, like what is this Cajun guy doing, you know?
Yeah.
But it became the norm, you know what I mean? So you hear terms like haute Creole, you know, so high Creole. You know what I mean? And Commanders, I consider a haute Creole restaurant because they're a high-level Creole restaurant, you know. But the influences you get from, you know, the Cajun, you know, and the African and the Haitian, you know, during the great Haitian, you know, revolution we had, you know, when all the Haitians came to New Orleans, you know, South American, you know, the Caribbean, you know, everything. There's so many great influences. The Italian, the Spanish, the German. You know what I mean? Like,
it's true. Yeah.
It's forever. Now, you know, our Vietnamese culture is bigger and better than ever. You know what I mean? And they bring their game to the table. And now we're like, yeah, I want some Vietnamese crawfish.
The Vietnamese food is amazing.
Can I get down on it?
I know. It's
Dong Phong, let's go. You know what I mean? Like,
I was just at the Tet Festival 2 weekends ago, and it's like the food is just
amazing.
unreal.
You know what I mean? So add that to the pot. That's us. That's New Orleans, man. You know what I mean? So you take all those great local natural ingredients we have, whether it's crawfish and shrimp, and mirlitons and tomatoes, and you know the hunting, the fishing, the duck, the redfish, whatever it is, and now you add all these great lineage stories of grandmothers telling grandchildren of how to make their family things, and it's ours. You know what I mean? So I don't try to draw a big line on what's Creole and what's Cajun. You know, I tell people that you want to get down really any gas station, you know, on I-10 between when you get off the base and, you know, overpass, you know, to the border. Get off. Go hit Pochet's gas station and go to Pochet's and get a plate lunch. You know what I mean? Like go wherever. You know
the best place for you to stop is Bourgeois Meat Market. There's a lot of great ones in Lafayette. But you hit a nerve with me about the fishing camp thing because
I got a Bourgeois hat in my truck right
about
now.
10 or 15 years of going down our fishing camp with Dad in Cocodrie, and my dad just created this thing where he'll blacken the specks we just caught with the Prud'homme blackened seasoning, and then he took Bourgeois bourgeois crawfish boudin, and juices that up a little bit in a pot and puts that on top of the blackened fish, and it's like basically crawfish etouffee at a high level on top of fresh caught
camp food, man. I'm telling you, and that's something that people don't understand. When we say things like, I say like, I did a thing when I was at Bourbon House, years ago when I was exec down there, and I did a thing called a fish camp po' boy. And they were like, somebody from out of town, what the hell's fish camp po' boy? I'm like, you got fish, you're in a camp, and there's bread. Go. You know what I mean? Like, you got to kill it, cook it. Everything's got to happen out there, So you get ingenuity about that. Maybe you don't, catch the redfish you wanted that day. Maybe you end up with, a drum or a sheephead or something.
Truly, though, it's some of the best dinners I had cooked with my dad in our camp in Cocodrie, like in my 20s and early 30s.
In New Orleans, growing up, in the parish, everybody's mom's cooked. Everybody had red beans on Monday and all. But during the week, it was my mom. She was like, chicken and dumplings, liver and grits, grits and griots, lost bread for breakfast. Just burned ass bread in a cast iron, just covered in granulated sugar. Good luck with school today, But on the weekends, my dad was just out hunting and fishing with all his buddies his whole life, But he kind of took over the weekend, So it was like Dad's secret barbecue shrimp recipe, And you remember those like crappy linoleum floors like that were in Schwegmann's, the double stack oven. And I remember being on like a little step ladder looking in the top oven, like some whole redfish in there. And he's like, don't tell anybody, this is the secret. And I'm like, right on, So you get that Southern Delta food, meat and potatoes during the week, And then, you eat Popeyes maybe one day. Maybe you got po' boys from the Chateau, Mr. Buddy with a loaf of bread, and a red, what is this? We call them, what was that red soda stuff? It was cream soda, but it was red. There was like yellow cream
big
soda,
red cream soda,
big red cream soda. You got a big 2 liter cream soda and a loaf of bread, and you got some fresh ham. You eat some po' boys. But Dad took over on the weekend, man. Ducks, rabbits. I don't know what he was doing. My sisters protested it. Me and my brother were like, let's go. You know what I mean? So we always something weird, and that's kind of what I put into the food. I was like, let's have the recognizable food. I want people to read a menu and go, I know what that is. I know that sounds good. I know that sounds good. Shit, I know what that is too. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Like that sounds really good. These are tough decisions because it's all something You're not, I go to a lot of restaurants and sometimes, I don't do as much anymore, but when you read a menu and you're like, no, maybe. If it's like 60 things in a menu, I might want 3.
Yeah.
Because everything else is just them throwing it on the table going like, and you're like, come on, man.
The other things I want to ask you, Eric, about Gris-Gris, the last question I had about the restaurant is just it's not getting to know you a little bit. It's not surprising that the restaurant just like really throws you a loop right when you walk in. You feel like you're walking into your kitchen.
Yeah.
Because of the way you have the bar. And the last couple of times I've been there in the last 2 or 3 months, I've had to sit upstairs because you can't get into the bar. It's like, I'm assuming everybody loves that setup. Like when you walk in, you're sitting at a big stainless steel bar and you were like watching the cooking happen.
Well, that's why we ended up there, because that place was Square Root before, Philip Lopez built that place, beautiful kitchen, really, amazing. But it was designed to do like 16 people, 5 nights a week, one time, bye, see you later. And I had to walk in there and go like, how do we do 300 in here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when my wife had finally convinced me that I was going to open a restaurant, like I was kind of, I'd been everywhere. I've been exec here and I was exec here, and I just kept hitting the ceiling a lot faster at every other place because I was driven,
Yeah.
And passion can be conceived sometimes as like, hostile at things, and I was hostily wanting to grow, and I wasn't. So my wife said we should open a restaurant, and I remember when I was looking all over town, she was in that building. She goes, "Hey, come meet me at like 1800 magazine." All right, whatever. And I walked in. And she was there, and she looked at me. She started like tearing up. She's like, "This is you. This is you." And I was like, "Okay," you know what I mean? Because she knew that I needed that avenue of connection to the guests. You know what I mean? Because my whole career, I'm very outspoken, good or bad. Don't care if you like it or not. You know what I mean? I just I'm going to talk. Period. So. The thing about restaurants is you can choose to go back or not. But, I mean, I like to interact. I love telling stories. Whether my wife is always like, you shouldn't tell that story. So I got great ones, man. I got stories that can blow your mind, man, like cooking for the President of the United States and going to jail on the same night because you got in a bar fight at Parasols. You know what I mean? Like, literally, real story. Getting bailed out by the Secret Service and brought back to the scene of the crime to go shut the bar down.
What president was it?
Junior.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I had Thanksgiving dinner with his old man in the Middle East.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of hit it off real quick. Like, I let him know I had Thanksgiving dinner with his old man when I was in the Middle East. No way. We became buddy. We did dinner with him. A couple of presidents were there, actually. And then we all went out and got smashed and got in a big bar fight. And
The Secret Service got you out.
to get us out of jail that night. It was great. My wife was like, yeah, I love you. I hate you.
Yeah.
But
At least there's no legal bill attached.
right. Thank you, commanders. But that's the thing, the restaurants are vibes, man. Like and like some of my favorite places that I go. Look, my wife is an eater. We love to eat. But she's also Italian. Give me meatballs, red wine, bread.
Yeah.
So we don't go crazy adventurous. So we like the neighborhood joints. But like people ask me where I eat it. I'm like, go to Joey K's, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, pork chop day with the mac and cheese and a beer the size of your head. Okay.
Yeah.
Hang out there by yourself. What I mean? Go to Joey Case, neighborhood, Miss Shirley. I ran the Streets for magazine for a long time. I was an uptown rat. But the vibe to me was always important. The interaction with the guests. And people expect it now. Because in the beginning I caught a lot of flack for being in a dining room talking to people because they want you in the kitchen. But now people
they want it.
They want to talk to you. They want to know what's going on. Hey, they know more. They're educated. They don't want to know behind the silver doors and the battleship back there. It's, steamy and bloody and violent. Like they want to see the clean thing, and whatever. The Gordon Ramsay thing you talked about.
We've all gone through I've loved one of my favorite shows, Top Chef. People watch that. There's all these different shows, right? You watch it, you get a sense of it, and then you just want to hear it from the chef,
right?
And
is that real? Is that true? Like I can tell you right now, I don't watch any cooking shows. I don't. I just don't find them interesting because they're really 99.999% of them are just fantasy anyway. They're all made up.
Same thing with legal shows.
Ratings.
Same thing with legal shows. So I go watch the fake cooking shows instead of the fake legal shows. You go watch the fake legal shows.
Because I've had people come in, like look, when we run in there, it's like one guy talking, like doom 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 doom. Hey man, yes chef, yes chef. It's a very disciplined thing because it has to be, and especially where we are, we're very small.
Yeah.
We're less than 1,500 square feet in the building. So you've got to have your act together. And I've had people all the time go like, hey, why don't you guys like yelling at each other and stuff like we see on TV? I'm like, we can. Would that make you want us to? I mean, is that what y'all normally like? We don't. Hey, B, you know what I mean?
If
like,
you tip 20, if you tip 30%, if you tip 30%, we'll start screwing around.
You want me to tag that? What do you want me to do, man? I'm on stage. You're on stage. I mean, it's like, and that's another thing. Like Walt Disney. Few people know. Walt Disney was a Marine.
Oh,
and he was kicked out of the Marine Corps. And the great thing about Walt Disney, if you look at him behind his desk, is if you ever see a picture behind his desk, behind him is a framed, blown-up version of his bad conduct discharge upside down. And I'm always like, yeah, Walt, man. Because it's like getting kicked out of the Hell's Angels or something. Like, how do you get kicked out of the Marine Corps, man? You got to be, special.
Yeah.
But he always said, if you ever go to Disney World's perfect. You know what I mean? And Disney World is an idea and it's a dream. You know? And that's what restaurants are, man. It's perception. It's what people hear about, what they read now about it in media and things and reviews and all. Then the phone call, then you walk up to the place. You know what I mean? And so it's all this great big theater, And if you ever walk around Disney World, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But behind every door that accesses an area where the public can interact with an employee, there's a sign on the back of that door that says, "You're now going on stage. Please get in character."
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like imagine being some 8-year-old kid, and holding your dad's hand, coming around the corner, eating like cotton candy, and
you spend all
Mickey's
this money,
over there with his head
there.
on the chair burning one, like,
Yeah.
oh my God, Mickey Mouse's face smokes, like it's over, man,
Yes.
But and that's what restaurants is, and you can't drive that into people because it's such an incestuous, crazy, violent, cannibalistic culture of like, rah, rah, rah. Everyone, it's so competitive, man, but and people go to other places like, we did this, that, there, don't care. Don't care what you did there. You know what I mean? Like, do this here, and you just try and tell people, man, be cool.
Yeah.
Like 99% of being a good cook is just being cool.
Yep.
Same thing with a serve. Be cool, man. I don't want to hear you tell the person next to me the same thing you told me.
Absolutely.
I don't want to go, hi, I'm Judy. We have da-da-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da-da. And you're like, next, And then somebody behind you sits down and you get to hear it again. Like, man, come on. I want to be like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
See what's up, man. And Ella Brennan again said it best when she said, "Let your guests dictate the level of your service." Maybe you're having an important meeting.
Because it's not about you.
It's not about
the
you.
guest.
It's about the
and
guest.
that our ego sometimes.
100%.
It's the same thing I think you were talking about earlier with like some of the chefs, like making the menu about impressing other chefs,
man.
or doing all these other things that distract away from the core principle of
Yeah.
what your business is, what my business is. Like, what is best for my client, for
Right.
you, what is best for your guest and your customer. And so I love that.
And it is, and it has its place, and it's great. Look, there's a lot. People don't realize how much talent's in this damn city, man.
Yeah.
And when Michelin came to town, for the first time,
It's just scratching the surface. There's so many good
but I was
restaurants.
like, there's a reason why it's never been here. You know what I mean? New Orleans doesn't need that, man. It really, really, really doesn't. And I almost feel like Michelin and James Beard and all those things over the years have just become what everything else is: marketing and branding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how much do you think I think about Michelin in my daily life until they said they're coming to New Orleans? Like, none.
Yeah.
And then it was jammed down my throat every single day. And now all of a sudden it's like everybody wants to do the Michelin thing. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, go to the corner store, man. Go to the mom and pops. Go to the ones who aren't doing that, who are busting it every single day.
Yeah.
But like, it's a way for Michelin to expand their name deeper.
course.
That's what they want to do, And
Brilliant on their
brilliant,
part, by the
great,
way.
Yeah,
but,
I wish I came up with it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that board meeting at a tire shop going like, we should start rating restaurants, y'all. Like, putting out their cigars. Like, what are you talking about, Bill? We sell tires,
This guy's
man.
had 2 bottles of bourbon.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're like, what? You're the authority on restaurants?
Yeah,
Shut
the tire
up, man.
company.
So it is what it is. And I like it. I've been to James Beard House. I was lucky enough to go do some dinners there. And it's beautiful and it's awesome and it's great. But it should be that. It should be exclusive. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, I feel like the exclusivity of the entire situation has just been, whitewashed.
Yeah.
It's like, how many people can we get involved now to make it bigger? It was that way. You can't tell me that, we're doing the same thing like, Danielle and those guys did when they were growing up in France and stuff. There were guys hitting them in the head with clubs and sticks and making them sleep with the chickens and feed them leftover scraps. I mean, it was indentured servant training. You know what I mean? Like, America's not into that crap. We're like, the croissant. Give me the croissant sandwich, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay. Put some ketchup on it and some French fries on the side. Like we turn our nose at everything. And why we invite that kind of stuffy European attitude into a place like New Orleans, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
You can respect it. You can say, great. Like, I love, my wife's a ballerina, professional, dance with all the best ballets. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean I go there and enjoy the music.
Sure.
I go there and just be like, great, I love you. And that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to go home and buy some soundtrack and ride around in my truck like, yeah, Swan Lake. Like, let people be people, man. If you want to be
100%.
exclusive, be exclusive. But I think labeling restaurants and giving them, the accolades they earn should be from their guest.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, these are people who are non-guest who come visit and as a one-time visit, two-time visit, and go, I like that. You like that? Check.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Get in the neighborhoods. There's a lot of people doing really great stuff. Like Rocky and Carlos in St. Bernard Parish should absolutely have a Michelin star on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. So let's talk. And we could go for another 3 hours, I think,
yeah.
Eric. But in wrapping, tell our listeners a little bit. Last question I have for you is: what can we expect coming up besides just excellent food? Any new changes to the menu? Anything coming up down the horizon at Gris-Gris that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so much going on, man. We've been talking.
I've liked
about,
some of the videos they're making you do. But let's talk about the food. I just had to say that before you
weird,
go.
man. I don't know anything about
I got
it,
a good
man.
laugh out of them.
Some of us, I just hear. I'm like, whatever you want to do, man.
When they poured a beer on you, I was
Yeah, I'm
like, Eric,
like, they just say, "Can we do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can do that." Man. And that just comes from it's good TV.
Yeah,
if it's
sure.
good for the restaurant, then I don't want to
100%.
say no. I draw the line on some things, but it's been such an evolving economy since 2020 in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was really tough. We took a big hit, and we've all done enough pivoting. I think we're all exactly right back where we were. And
At the beginning, yeah.
And before I start pivoting again and starting the second circle, I'm like, I'm done. You know what I mean? So I think I read a really good thing recently, and it just said that the bravest thing a restaurant can do is decide what it's not going to be. You know what I mean? And it really
100%.
struck me. You know what I mean? Like, wow, that makes sense. Because you get it. Even me, anti-everything, everyone, I'm not everything, you know, but I'm just like,
I get what you're saying.
You know, I don't want to play the game. You know, I've been there, done that, bumper sticker T-shirt. You know, I want to find time to go fishing, and I want to hunt, and I want to hang out with my wife. You know, but you get wrapped up in the game. You know, you're chasing it, and the economy, it's terrible.
Yeah,
it's terrible. You know, and you own a restaurant, you know, you're getting taxed like 3-4 times on the same dollar.
Yeah,
you know, and a lot of it's local, and it's sad what we get treated like as business owners in New Orleans. It's ridiculous, and it's probably borderline illegal. We can talk about it later. Yeah. And so I just said, you know what have I been trying to do the whole time? You know, when I opened, I wasn't trying to fit in with anybody. I was just trying to open and do my thing. You know what I mean? And that's how it starts. And then, you know, you get pulled in directions. You have to, you know, and then COVID happens, and you lose every penny you've ever earned in your life, you know, and you're like, what do I do now? You know, you do what you have to do, you know, and we've been doing what we have to do for a long time. And unfortunately for the restaurant industry, doing what you have to do, you know, to stay alive doesn't mean you're going to succeed. It just doesn't. You're going to fail. Yeah. You know, you're in a situation where, you know, it's the statistics are insane on restaurant failures. And they're even worse on like, you know, money-wise, like, you know, 3 to 5 percent to the bottom line, national averages. You know, it's ridiculous. Commodities. One day it's chicken, one day it's pork, one day it's potatoes, one day it's this. One day we're flooded, one day we don't have power, one day we're water boil, one day we're this, the fire, the ding, the doom. It's just left, right, left, right, left, right. So I really thought about, you know, the bravest thing that you can do is decide what you're not going to become. And so I think I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And we've been talking about it for a couple of days now. It's kind of came in my mind where I really want to just go OG. You know, the idea was to have this neighborhood restaurant.
Back to the original menu.
Because I worked every big restaurant in this damn city. You know what I mean? You know, well, not all of them, but I mean, I've worked the big ones. I've done the 16, 17, 1800, 1900, you know, dinner covers. I've worked on, you know, friggin' Bourbon Street. You know what I mean? I've worked on Royal Street. You know, I did 16 years in the Quarter. You know, I've been uptown. I've been Metairie, downtown, North Shore. I've been there, done that, you know what I mean? And I'm like, you know, it's all the same dance, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to do something cool. And my goal, I think, you know, like I look at a restaurant like Giacomo's. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's a fun place to me.
100%.
You know what I mean? It's fun. You know what I mean? And you go there and you feel like people are having fun there. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to get back to, because we lost the idea that we got to have fun doing it. Yeah. Because we're all strapped. You know what I mean? And it forces hospitality. It forces you to go, we're like this now, and you're not, and you never were, and it's so transparent. You know what I mean? So, and I'm just sick of trying to become something that we never were meant to be anyway. Yeah. Because we're all tap dancing on everybody's freaking feelings. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm like, bing, 2 fingers up to everybody in the front door. You got a problem with it? I'm happy to throw you out and punch you in the face. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care anymore. I mean, we did it during COVID. We'll do it again. You know, but I want to go back and see if I can pull off like my original menu at original prices. And
so you can test that this summer, you're thinking?
I'm thinking I'm going to get into it this summer. I mean, I'm just going to do it. I mean, we're going to go down to like 5 days a week. We're going to try to get like, again, like we talked about, my mom's chicken and dumplings. You know, like the way chicken and dumplings hit the menu was the fire station down there in Magazine, these crazy guys who we, you know, throw darts and drink beer and, you know, and growing up in the neighborhood. We did an Iron Chef thing one time, you know, and all the firemen are great chefs, just so you know. Yeah. Don't ever, ever, ever contradict that. Any fireman can outcook any chef in New Orleans. And I'm going on record with that fella, so I expect some phone calls. But I had a guy come in, he was doing a dish. We kind of went head to head, you know, but he was frying biscuits. Oh. And I was like, what? You know, this is in the Firehouse Magazine. He's like, yeah, man, I ever fried biscuits. And I was blown away by it. You know, I'm like, fried biscuits. What? And so we ended up playing, and the rule was, if you beat me, I'll put an item on the menu, you know. And so this guy smashed me with this fried biscuit thing. And I'm like, dude, it's going on the menu, Firehouse chicken and fried biscuits was the move. So it was the Firehouse chicken and fried biscuits. It was like like a chicken and dumplings. And it was brutal. You know what I mean? And then it evolved over the years from, 2013, 14, 15. So it'd be like, I'll do my mom's chicken and dumplings, you know? And it just kind of stuck, you know? But that's neighborhood stuff, you know? That's,
absolutely.
You know, winning your neighborhood again, you know, it's tough because, again, New Orleans it's hard to be supported by just your neighbors. You know what I mean? We need tourism, period. Yeah. If all tourism would shut down tomorrow, New Orleans would 100% be a ghost town. Yeah. It would be zero. Like the land would be more valuable as like a duck blind than it would be as a Hilton. Yeah. You know what I mean? So at some point, someone's got to figure that out. You know what I mean? And what we got to do is and get back to that, you know, and let's get back to the neighborhood joints. And I really want to do it. You know, I want to be a neighborhood joint again. I want to have a good roast beef po' boy. I really do.
Yeah.
I miss eating them all the time. I'm going to drive to Mid-City or Domelices to get one, you know. But, you know, I want people to get, you know, I want to do that again. I want to have conversations again. I want to make it a restaurant again and not so much, you know, a seesaw of emotion. We're like, what cannot say anymore in public. You know, it's just so bad. It makes hospitality feel forced.
Yeah.
And I want people to come in and go, this is the free zone, man. You know, like, let's leave it all outside the door. Let's listen to some music, man, have a good lunch, tell a couple stories, joke about some things, you know, in a cool place, in a cool town, you know, and move on. You know? And it's like, it's become such a, what side are you on town? Worse than it's ever been in the history of this town, ever someone stuck a flag in it when it was dirt and woods, you know. It's the worst this town's ever been. You know what I mean? And it's going to be that way for a long time until we start going, enough's enough, man. You know, if New Orleans is so unique, then why is the New Orleans so divided?
Yeah.
You know, we're not unique at all. We're just like every other damn city in the world who is just divided. And it's affecting our culture. It's affecting our community. It's affecting our economy. You know what I mean? And we just got to go like, dude, remember when we used to like be able to like just be drunk all the time and have fun? Can we do that again, you know? Can we just get back to having fun?
You know where you can be drunk all the time and have fun? Gris-Gris. That's where you can be drunk and have fun all the time.
You can, but have someone drive you home.
I'm really stoked that you announced this theory that may come to pass this summer.
It's going to happen.
Overrule podcast. I'm looking forward to it when it drops. Make sure I'm going to be following. I follow you on social media. I can't wait to try it.
I read the menu this morning.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Pork belly and watermelon.
Yeah. Oh,
who remembers the pork belly watermelon?
Dude, it's really
the pork belly watermelon. You know what I mean? Like,
it just works.
The devil crab, you know, we had a devil crab on there, you know. I mean, like, I was, you know, my grandmother's old stuffed crabs, you know, and in real crab shells. We'd buy the crab shells and stuff them every day, you know. I mean, like, how good is that stuff, man?
It's
you know?
good.
It's good, man.
So if you haven't been, you have to check out Gris-Gris, hopefully before the summer, but you'll also be able to see the OG recipe this summer. And Eric, you have to come back on the podcast because we could go another 7 hours.
I could go 47 hours straight. If you just keep this cup of coffee full next to me, there's no one's going to outlast me in this. But I got you a book too. So
I like to freaking talk. So what do you? Oh, amazing.
So I brought you a cookbook, which has got everything that you love about the restaurants in it.
Thank you so much.
And that's another thing. The Modern Creole book that I put out last year. It's got everything in it. You know, it's got all my dad's stuff, all my mom's stuff, my grandmother's stuff. You know, it's got my wife's stuff in there. You know, so I'm really diving back into the book to put that home cooking back in the restaurant. But it went back to the beginning, like you said, like, you know, let's just go the old school, man. And we're gonna try it. You know, maybe, you know, again, be brave enough to decide what you're not going to be. Struck me so hard. You know, like, maybe I only have to open 5 days a week. Maybe I can give my staff a break. Maybe maybe it's not law that we work 80 hours a week anymore. Maybe we can find a middle zone, you know. And some restaurants are finding it, you know, and I'm going to look for it really hard, you know, and see if I can do it. It's just a really tough place to do it. I tell people
it's the most competitive place in the world to do what you're doing, and it's just
this is the thing that I tell people is New Orleans is the greatest food city in the world, and it's the worst city in the world to be in food.
Yeah.
That's just a fact, and it's undeniable. And I'll debate anybody.
All right, I'm not. I'd get into it, but I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, it's so hard to make your grandmother's red beans and rice. Why can't we just cook our grandmother's red beans and rice and make a living? I don't understand anymore.
Well, if you're a displaced Cajun in New Orleans, you have a restaurant. You need to be a Gris-Gris. If you're a tourist, you need to be a Gris-Gris. And if you're a local and you've been in New Orleans in your entire life, you're gonna have amazing Cajun and Creole food at Gris-Gris. One of my favorite chefs. Thank you so much, Eric, for being on the show.
Anytime.
And chatting with me. We're going to have you back at some
Absolutely.
point.
We need to cut some time. Yeah.
I had some other ideas. I wanted to go into some of your stories, and we're going to go into those next.
Awesome. I love it.
Check out Gris-Gris. Thank you all for listening. This has been a great discussion and good episode of the Overrule Podcast brought to you by the Scott Vickner Law Firm. We really appreciate all you listening. Please check out Gris-Gris. Check out Eric Cook online. He's a great chef and an interesting and amazing person, and we'll see you all next time
on part 2.
Scott Vickner, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.